It's me, Grant Paul Adams. Hope you're all keeping well and having a very good week. We thought we'd just do a very brief live on this oddly very sunny Friday morning here in South Wales. First of all, coffee check. So this is a brand new coffee from Dark Arts. Now, I'll be honest, this has become my bias over the last couple of years. This one is the Colombian Little Seasons. The thing I love about Dark Arts is their coffee is just so fully flavoured. And recently they also sent out to all of their subscribers some of the coffee that was slightly overproduced, meaning you could get it for a bit of a discount, and it was still absolutely phenomenal. Admittedly, I got through a kilo in about 4 days. It was a heavy week at work, but it's always nice to have a really good coffee. Also, you will notice the brand new packaging. So this has changed from the original black packaging that they had. This is definitely a bit more quirky, a little bit more kitsch. It's actually pretty awesome. And the coffee is just, as always, absolutely spectacular. Head on over to Dark Arts now to order your bag. Or if you do want to do a subscription as well, where you can order anything from 100 grams up to a kilo every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however you want to do it. I tend to do it every month. It just makes more sense for me. And then I can buy additional bags as I need to. They are not a sponsor of Coffee and Property, but I do really like them as a roaster. So it always makes sense to work with people that you really enjoy, or at least consume products from people that you really enjoy. So on to the live today. So we've got a couple of topics that we're going to look at. We're going to briefly look over auction purchases, how to deal with downward valuations, looking at how lenders will lend on property as well. So hopefully this just gives you a couple of snippets ready to get yourself geared up for the weekend if you're looking for property, or if you're actually looking to get things working with some existing deals. So first of all, auctions. Can you use a mortgage on an of anywhere between 14 and 28 days? You may sometimes get an auction that will allow 56 days for a completion. But generally speaking, the way the mortgage market works at the moment, to get a mortgage offer and to get it to complete within 28 days is relatively difficult. Not saying it's impossible, we've done it at Harvey Bowes a few times, but it is quite a tricky thing to get to work. That's why people tend to favour using bridging finance, which can be a bit scary if you've not done it before. But bridging finance really is the best way of getting it done. Just to put things in perspective, I did a bridging loan with a lender recently, and we went from application to formal offer within 3 days, and it went straight into legals, no hassle with legals. There was a great solicitor working for the lender and for the client, and we completed within 28 days very, very comfortably. Now, what this really meant was there was no stress on the client's part. They knew what was going on. They knew how to make it work. So really, it was a super useful way of getting the funding to come together. So it's well worth considering that point. This is another very, very big question when it comes to auction properties themselves. Will the lender that you go to value the property on the market value or on the purchase price? Now, a little insider tip. Technically speaking, when it comes to auction properties, market value and purchase price are actually one and the same thing. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, this property's worth 500 grand, but I'm getting it for 350, so surely they can use the higher market value. Technically speaking, when the lenders are looking at auction properties, the market dictates what you pay for that property. That's their view. So the purchase price and the market value, one in the same thing. Now, this can be really useful because if you do see some potential value, if it's a property that you might think, actually that's got, that's worth significantly more if I just do this or if I just do this, then that can be an advantage. Obviously, they're only going to lend against what you physically pay for it. And don't forget, you've normally got a 10% exchange fee to pay at the start. But this can be a great way of building some equity in your portfolio. And certainly as far as it goes on the bridging side, it can still be a quick transaction. But yeah, never forget that part really, that technically speaking, the lender is going to look at what you pay for it at auction as the official market value. It may well be that the valuer that goes out, or if it's a desktop valuation, could see it as being slightly more, could see it as being slightly less. But technically speaking, they are valuing it on the same basis. Probably the one sticking point with any deal, particularly around auctions, is having a good solicitor. Now, I always stress this in the videos where we talk about bridging finance across the board, because having a good solicitor really can be the be all and end all. You can have an amazing broker, an amazing lender, and as an applicant, you could be completely on the ball with everything, getting documents over the same time as we're asking for them, to be completely ready for everything. But if you've got a bad solicitor, this can really be the Achilles heel of any deal. So do your research up front. Always make sure that, first and foremost, you're comfortable with the broker that you're working with. Be comfortable with the lending choices that that broker makes. And then when it comes to the solicitor, do your homework. If you know you're going to an auction to buy a property, have a chat to a few different solicitors, ask for recommendations. And although it's very difficult to work off of a recommendation, because technically speaking, like with anything, a solicitor can only be as good as their last transaction. And people will generally get recommended if they're doing a constant good job. I will always let people know of the people that I find really good to work with, but I'll never make a formal recommendation because it can be quite a tricky subject. However, get comfortable with a solicitor. Work out if they've got the capacity for that workload as well for an auction property. If they have, if the fees are acceptable, and if you find the communication acceptable with that solicitor, then definitely worth seeing if you can work with them. Bridging lenders generally don't have a locked-in panel that they have to use to represent you. So you can work with anyone as long as they're capable of working to the time frame of an auction, and if they understand how to work with bridging finance. So it's particularly useful. Now, the subject of down valuations. This is really tough if you're a property investor, especially when you go through various periods in the cycle of lending, in the property world as a whole. You are going to come up against down valuations, and some of them might not be fair. So how do you go about it? How do you know if it's justified or not? Well, in all honesty, sometimes valuers can be a little bit hard on the property, but they really are the gospel point of all the information in the local area, the property type, and how that property fares in the market as a whole. And they have to make their recommendations to a lender so that they can lend accordingly. Now, that's normally why you'll find that they are the most risk-adverse part of that property chain, but they can also be your best friend. Now, something that I find useful, if it's a property that you've done up, if you've done a major refurb, for example, having a valuation pack can be really useful. Some valuers don't like it, but other valuers find it quite beneficial. If you can do all of your research and think about things like this, look at local comparables within around a sort of circumference of about 0.3 miles. Also look at other properties that are the same or similar within your direct area. And try to think about the audience as well. Have you got rental comparables? Have you got valuation comparables? Think about it this way. If you're doing an HMO, for example, and it's going to be a 5-bed HMO, are there going to be comparables in your immediate area that show what a 5-bed HMO could value for, could rent for, etc.? Now, the other part as well, and we've seen this a couple of times recently, is historic problems. Okay, put it this way. Let's say there's been a hole in the roof, and all of a sudden the property appears to be very damp, but no decorative work has been done. So the property itself might have been fixed, and you may well have had a damp report shown. But if the property still looks like it's damp, that could put serious doubt into the valuer's mind. So they may ask for additional reports. So if you can see evidence of damp or even historic damp in a property, think about this in advance, especially if you're purchasing it. Bit more difficult for an auction purchase, but certainly if you're buying something on the market, have a little look. Maybe you do need a damp report. See if you can get that explored. Does the current owner have any information regarding any damp works that have been done? Think about all of these things in advance, because the more you can do ahead of time, the less time it's going to take to correct these things during an application process. So it is particularly useful. Now, another major part of this, and all of it kind of filters into the same thing, but it is well worth bearing in mind. How do the lenders lend? Now, we covered this very, very briefly a couple of moments ago about auctions, but this is where the bridging market in particular and the mortgage market can differ significantly. Now, generally speaking, and this is very general, criteria is different with every lender that we work with, but most lenders will go off of the 180-day valuation. So if you've got a valuer that goes out, you may well see a valuation report that shows varying formats of that value of the property. It might be market value, vacant possession subject to 180 days, vacant possession subject to 90 days. All of these things can factor in a bigger story with that property. So ask in advance, talk to your broker, understand how that lender will lend against that property and what figure they will go off of. Because sometimes you might get a valuation report back that says the market value is £500,000, but your vacant possession 180-day valuation might be £475,000. Think about it that way, because if they're going to lend off the lower, you then don't want to get your hopes up thinking you're going to borrow more, if in fact you actually aren't. Now also, when it comes to bridging, this is where things become a big niche, because there's so many bridging lenders out there now, and it's a very, very competitive market. So every lender will be slightly different. Some will go against purchase price. Others will lend against a below market value figure, subject to a maximum loan to cost. Others will look at the true open market value. So when we refer to an open market value bridge, that means that they're going to lend against whatever that value is going to be on day one of that loan. So if you've got a property, for example, that is a block of 6 flats, and you're going to split the titles and maybe even do some works leading up to the day that it completes, some lenders will lend against a matter of fact of what it will be the day that that loan completes itself. So they can lend against that, sometimes even up to 100% of the purchase price. Other lenders might look at the same deal and say, well, you're paying £350,000, and even if the title split value is £500,000, well, we're still going to lend against the £350,000. So it's good to understand how that lender works and how they operate in the background. All of this can be done up front at the start. You don't have to think about all of these things because your broker should know the information. So if you did get to a stage where you thought, oh, there's an auction going on today and I might win this property, or an estate agent has just called me but they need a decision now, it's entirely possible. This can still be looked at during the process. But generally, a good broker will understand how a lender will lend, what they will lend against, and any special conditions they will likely come up against. So all of this factors into a much easier story for you and how you can make things work better going forward. So I hope you found that useful today. Just a couple of closing thoughts really. The market is moving. You know, where we are in South Wales, the market is still booming. People are buying, people are putting offers forward. The auction houses are full all the time at the moment. And we get regular inquiries about these deals moving ahead, people looking and people getting excited about auction properties in particular. But think about it where you are. Generally speaking, I've always likened South Wales to the northeast of England, certain parts of the northwest. That can be really beneficial because a lot of these markets are very similar, but things definitely seem to be improving. Lots of people are a little bit concerned about the upcoming budget, which is happening at the end of October this month. So consider that, but also think that if you're worried about things like capital gains tax or additional taxation issues, property investing is exactly that. It's property investing. A lot of people do this for the long haul. And if you're worried about down valuations or property prices, you don't really need to be overly concerned about that unless you're looking to flip a property. Because if you're investing in a property for the long term, then the chances are prices are going to go up, prices are going to go down. The good thing is the rental valuations are always going to be there. People are always going to need a place to live. And if they can't buy a property for themselves to live in, they will be renting. So even if your values go like this in your rental property portfolio, the rental income should always go like that. So if you're keeping things for the long term, the capital gains tax won't be as big of an issue and the valuations won't be as big of an issue. Only perhaps if you're hoping to get maximum leverage on your mortgage. So it's just worth considering. Because that's such a big thing now, and just build these relationships. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Friday. Most importantly, keep enjoying your coffee, and we'll be back with more videos very, very soon. But we look forward to seeing you, and yeah, hope you're all good. Take care.